Howdy everyone, Sir UD here. If you're clicking on this video, you probably realize that I finally beat Alan Wake 2, and boy, do we got a lot to discuss. This was one of my most anticipated games of this year. Now, to set the record straight, I hadn't played the original Alan Wake 1 till I think it's about a month ago, and that it also includes Control. With that being said, I remember pretty vividly when Alan Wake 2 got announced. I wasn't really a fan of horror games. I still don't really think I am, but this game just looked so intriguing and so interesting that I just had to keep my eye out for it. It was something that I thought looked super cool, super innovative, and so throughout the next year or two, it's kind of keeping my eye out for trailers, news, anything I can get my hands on. So near the release of the game, around October or so, I decided to play through Control and the original Alan Wake. I played these games to kind of get familiar with the story. I didn't want to just sit there and watch a video, because even though I think that helped with Control, I think the original Alan Wake 1 story was straightforward enough to where I could get the story while playing the game. And we're not going to go too far into those games. I have separate videos on them. You're free to go check those out if you want. But today we're kind of sticking with mainly Alan Wake. So with that being said, let's dive into my experience and my impressions with Alan Wake 2. Before we fully dive in, I want to start by saying we aren't really going to go into spoilers in this video today. I want to give you guys the experience to experience the story for yourselves, but we will go over their kind of introductions to their story. So about the first couple hours or so, I feel like that's fair, and doing so allows me to go a little bit more in depth of what I want to talk about with this game. So if you want to go in completely blind, I just want to give you guys a little bit of a warning. We're not going to talk about much. It'll just be a little bit, but no major spoilers in this video. With that being out of the way, let's get into it. So if you've ever played any of Remedy's other games, you know that they kind of have a charm to them, not only just with gameplay, but the way that they tell their stories. And Alan Wake 2, no exception. It's, at least in the way that they present it to you, it's pretty similar to the other Remedy games. So let's start with the one complaint that I really have with this game, and it's just the way it plays. It's a survival horror game. Like I kind of said earlier in the video, I'm not really a fan of these type of games. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's your Resident Evil kind of games, the way they play, where you have very few bullets, you got very few health kits, you put a whole fucking clip into a dude before they actually die. Those type of games, I haven't really found my enjoyment with them quite yet. So it's more of a personal issue than a nag at the game, I guess I would say. That's not to say that Remedy did a bad job here. For the genre they were going for, it hits it perfectly. And I think it makes the most amount of sense to make it one of those games. I'm just not a fan of the artificial difficulty these games bring with it. It's not even scary to put like 8 fucking rounds into a dude before they die. I think that if they wanted to make it more scary, make them have like less health but be way faster and way more aggressive. But that's a whole separate thing for later. I just want to say that's pretty much my only complaint. It's just the genre it is, but that's more of a personal issue than anything else. With that being said though, there is so much this game has to offer that I found made it enjoyable and even made it up there with my game of the year contenders. So as I stated in my original Alan Wake 1 video, I enjoyed the flashlight mechanic. It was super cool. It was innovative, but it's not like universal as like an idea. Like, I don't think there's much to really come up with, but like the whole idea that, oh, the light kills the dark enemies type of stuff. But the way it felt in Alan Wake 1 made it feel super good. And other than the inanimate objects, I liked Alan Wake 1's combat style. But here in Alan Wake 2, they made it feel so much better. Now, of course, they made it fit into the horror genre. So you have batteries, your flashlight can't just automatically recharge. So I will say though, I kind of like that change. I think it makes it to where you can't rely so much off of the flashlight. You just need the flashlight to get their shield done. And I feel like that's fine enough with me. It feels super good to play and it feels better to use than on the first one and more natural. Now, with that being said, I think the flares in this game are not as good as what they were in Alan Wake 1. They took forever to kind of like charge up and actually use. Or I shouldn't say charge up, but pull out and actually use. So I only used them when the enemies would grab you and it was like your breakaway attack. Flare gun though, and the stun bombs were way stronger, but you, of course, it being a survival horror game, you don't really get that very much. So we're talking about what I liked. I think we need to give a brief understanding of where this takes place in the story. I'm guessing that if you're playing Alan Wake 2, you've probably played Alan Wake 1 remastered, and we're probably wondering where it sits at within the story. Is it directly after? No, but it does take place after Alan Wake 1. It takes place about 13 years after, and of course the events from the first game still apply here, still canon to the story or whatever, but it's not like directly after. That makes sense. There's enough here to where you don't need to play the first game either, but it would really help if you did. All right, let's start with Saga's story. If you don't know, she's the second protagonist in this game. She's an FBI agent who came here to Bright Falls to investigate a series of murders believed to be done by a cult. Her and her partner, Alex Casey, which is a bit of a smart ass, soon realize that something very supernatural is going on in this little town, which forces them to investigate further into not only the town's history, but suspects as well. Saga has kind of a unique ability to investigate things or profile people. It's done in a little space in her head that she nicknames the Mind Place. This is where you get further info, you piece things together, and you find out whether or not people are telling the full truth or not, usually. But this also gives you a deeper understanding of not only Saga, but the characters in this world as well. It's a very good way of, just understanding the main story overall in little bits and pieces that are going on. It's a really cool mechanic that lets you get deeper into understanding not only current events, but reflecting on those previously. They give nods to the first game, all this and that. So it's really cool. I will say that Alan has something similar to this, but his is unique in his own different way, which, speaking of which, let's talk about Alan's side. About 3 hours into the game or so, you finally get introduced to Alan Wake. Those of you who don't know, he's our pretty much main protagonist of this story, a famous writer who went missing after the events in 2010, aka the events of the first game. His writing seems to turn into reality because of Cauldron Lake. Essentially, Alan's side of the story is a prequel to how he ends up getting out of the lake. But don't let that fool you. Alan's story is actually really good. It gives quite a bit of context to what's going on and arguably is more interesting than Saga's parts of the story. I found myself I shouldn't say way, but like I was so much more intrigued in Alan's side because it felt like it was giving me pieces of what I really wanted to know. Now, like I mentioned before, he has his own separate mind place, but his is a little different. So he has a cool mechanic, and I'm going to try and explain it as best as I can. Basically, during Alan's story, you go to different places and get what are called plot points. For example, like you find out a murder happened at a theater, and that theater is your setting. So that plot point is tied to that setting right now. But let's say previously before, let's go with like a drug scene. So you could take the drug scene plot, apply it to the theater setting. It would change the theater like physically, which would let you progress further. You get another plot point, you can take it back to the theater setting, change that one, and it makes you progress further. It's super cool. And with the power of the next gen, it's like instant. So you put in the plot point, he instantly changes it, and it changes the setting. You get new plot points. There's multiple settings in each level, and You just go through, progress, go on with the level, and it's done. I know it's not the best explanation of it, but when you play, they do a really good job of explaining it. And I think it's just a cool tie-in. Like, Alan Wake's a writer. And so it makes perfect sense for him to be able to write and change his reality in certain points. It's one of the coolest things I've seen in a video game, honestly. I mean, we've seen like instant fast travel, instant this and that, but not something quite like this. That's also one of his main mechanics, I guess I should say. He has a couple. He has a lamp which can contain light and then kind of alter areas, just like his typewriter thing. It doesn't come into play as much as the typewriter mechanic, nor do I think it's as cool, but yeah, it's pretty cool. And unlike Saga, which is in Bright Falls, Alan's story takes place in this dark, twisted version of New York, which keeps the game feeling super refreshing. If you get bored of Saga's story, you can switch to Alan's. You can go back and forth. You could do all of Saga's, then it'll switch you to Alan's. The final two main missions, you gotta complete both of their stories before it lets you progress further onto them. So at some point you're gonna play both, but yeah, that's as far as we'll go with story stuff. I don't want to talk about it very much, so let's keep going. So like many of Remedy's games, Alan Wake mixes media together, and I think that this is the best version we've seen in it, period. You know, using the power of next gen and PCs and all this and that. There's like a loading screen every now and then, but like gameplay wise, there's like no loading screens. The only time I ever seen a loading screen was switching from Saga to Alan. So there's that. There's no loading screens. There's also these live action sequences. If you've played Control, you've probably got a little familiar with it. And some of other Remedy's games has it too, but I don't think they quite have it to the extent of Alan Wake. Like, Alan Wake straight up replaces some of its cutscenes with the live action stuff. Like, there's multiple times where Alan goes on a talk show and it's live action. There's a certain part of this game where it feels like you're playing a fucking music video. During Saga's Mind Place, sometimes it'll kind of go live action-y. It's very smooth. Like, it eases you in. There's no loading screen. It's very innovative. Like, there'll be points where you walk up to the TV, you hold the button and it like slowly zooms you in and you're in the scene, which leads to some of the cutscenes and stuff like I was saying. There's that. The soundtrack for this game is fucking phenomenal, dude. I don't think there's a day that's really gone by where I haven't listened to at least one of the songs on there. You know, there's enough that could be said about the soundtrack. You know, it just like Alan Wake 1, you know, at the end of chapters, it'll play a song. They don't have songs during the game. Like I said, there's at one point where you feel like you're playing a music video, but I've just never seen a game combine all these sequences and all this and that together in one game. And the game's not even long. It's like, I think it took me like 17 hours to beat it. And if you go to the New Game Plus, it has a whole different ending too. So there's a complete reason to go back, replay. During the story, there'll be different manuscripts that you couldn't get before. It also gives you a reason to replay. Trust me, I think you should. This isn't exactly a review of Alan Wake 2. This is me coming on here and telling you guys what I enjoyed about it and why I thought it was up there with my Game of the Year contenders. If I wanted to give a review, I think we would talk about the story a bit more, but I don't really want to spoil that for you guys. I think that this story is something incredible. And if you've played the first game or Control and get that kind of mystery stuff to where things will be explained to you throughout the game, it's incredible, dude. It's such a unique way of storytelling with all the mixed media and stuff that it's just something I think everybody should experience for themselves. You know, and not only that, but this game's like an art form. You could be like, oh, it's not art, but I think every game is art. And this one in particular takes multiple different forms of it and combines it into one experience that I haven't seen almost any piece of media I think really do. You know, like I said before, sometimes it turns into a movie. You got the music, you got the actual game itself, where it's a pretty fucking good horror game, I think. There's like one point where I jumped. I will admit that. I was playing on a surround sound speaker and there was one moment where it made me jump. But yeah, dude, not even that, but the stories. I mean, you got Saga, who's an FBI agent trying to figure out this weird supernatural horror story that's going on in this one little town. And then you got Alan Wake, which is trapped in this one weird dimension whose things are looping and crazy around him, and he's just trying to figure his way out. I think that this game succeeds at everything it tries to do, and that's very rare. I don't think there's really been any game other than Baldur's Gate that really succeeds at what it comes out to be. And in this day of age, it's, you know, unheard of for a game to be in an impressive, like, fully finished state. But yeah, I just wanted to come on here, talk to you about why I thought this was an incredible game, why I think you guys should check it out and maybe give it a shot. Even though some people aren't going to enjoy this game, I think you should at least look into it. But this has been Sir UD, and, you know, talking about my unwanted opinion as always. And I will see you guys later. Peace.